systems of the human body.
Skeletal system. Bones. The skeletal system is made up of bones, joints, and cartilage. Bones are hard and they support our whole body. If we didn't have bones, our body would be like jelly or a jellyfish. Joints connect our bones and allow movement in our skeleton. Cartilage is softer and more elastic than bones, and you can find it in your nose and ears. The muscular system and skeletal system make our locomotor system. We have more than 200 bones, like our skull, spinal cord, humerus, ribs, and femur bones. Other bones that we have are jawbone, vertebrae, clavicle, shoulder blade, ulna, radius, sternum, pelvis, kneecap, tibia, fibula.
The functions of the human skeleton are to provide shape and structure to the human body, to protect major organs, to provide places where muscles can attach, enabling movement, to produce red blood cells, mineral storage, in particular calcium. There are 206 bones in the human body. They are connected together at joints to provide a frame which gives our body shape, structure, and support. Bones also protect major organs. In particular, flat bones such as the sternum, ribs, and scapula protect the heart, lungs, and other organs in the chest cavity. Imagine how long we would live without a rib cage for protection. There would certainly be no contact sports allowed. Bones provide places where muscles attach, enabling movement. Flat bones provide a large surface area for powerful muscles to attach. Long bones, such as the tibia, work as levers when muscles attach near the ends, creating a mechanical advantage. This means a small contraction in the muscle can create a very large range of motion. The inner part of a long bone contains bone marrow. This is where red and white blood cells and platelets are produced. Red blood cells carry oxygen to your muscles. White blood cells are important for fighting disease and infection, whilst platelets cause blood clotting when the skin is damaged. The skeleton is the main storage site of minerals such as calcium and phosphorus. Calcium is important for strong teeth and bones. It is an important mineral for health and sports performance.
The skeleton is the framework of the body. Without it, the body would be without form and it wouldn't even be possible to walk upright. Among its many functions, the skeleton serves to protect vital organs such as the brain, the heart, and the lungs. One field of study that bones are very important to is forensic anthropology. But before we can become forensic anthropologists like we see on TV, we need to learn all about the skeleton. We'll provide a complete, in-depth study of the skeletal system in other CTE videos, but for now, we'll just be doing a brief overview of the skeletal system as a whole. The skeleton is divided into two major sections: the axial skeleton, and the appendicular skeleton. The first section we'll cover is the axial skeleton. This forms the main trunk of the body and consists of the skull, spinal column, ribs, and sternum. The sternum is the breastbone, and the skull is composed of 8 different bones. The spinal column is also known as the vertebral. There are 26 vertebrae in the spinal column and an intervertebral disc between each. The vertebral or spinal column's function is to protect the spinal cord. The main function of the invertebral disc is to act as a shock absorber between each vertebra. The costae, or ribs, are composed of 24 ribs, or 12 pairs of ribs. There are 7 pairs of true ribs and 5 pairs of false ribs, of which the last 2 pairs are called the floating ribs. The rib's main function is to protect vital organs such as the heart, major blood vessels, and the lungs. These bones are also responsible for the production or creation of blood. The medical term for this is hematopoiesis. The second major section of the skeletal system is called the appendicular skeleton. This section forms the extremities of the body, which are the shoulder girdle, arm bones, pelvic girdle, and the leg bones. The shoulder girdle is comprised of 4 bones. It's made up of 2 clavicles, known as the collarbones, and 2 scapulas, which are known as the shoulder bones. Together, these bones form the shoulder girdle, to which the arm bones attach to. The arm is composed of 3 bones. The upper bone is known as the humerus. This is categorized as a long bone. The lower bones, of which there are 2, are called the radius and the ulna. Attached to the radius and ulna are the wrist bones, otherwise known as the 8 carpals. Attached to the 8 carpals are the hand bones, and the hand bones are comprised of 5 metacarpals, which form the palm of the hand, and the 14 phalanges, which form the fingers, including the thumbs. The pelvic girdle is the structure to which the leg bones are attached. The pelvic girdle is made up of 2 os coxae, or hip bones. Each hip bone is divided into 3 sections: the ilium, the ischium, and the symphysis, or pubis. The leg bones are attached to the pelvic sockets, called the acetabulums. Each leg consists of 1 femur, or thigh bone. It is in the upper leg and is also categorized as a long bone. Between the upper and lower leg is the patella, or kneecap. And the lower leg is composed of the tibia and fibula. The tibia is known as the shin bone, and the fibula runs parallel to it. Attached to the lower leg are the 7 tarsals known as the ankle bones. Attached to the ankle bones are the 5 metatarsals. And attached to these bones are the 14 phalanges, which are the toes. And last but not least of the leg bones is the heel of the foot. This is known as the calcaneus. Long bones are hard, dense bones that provide strength, structure, and mobility. An example is the femur, or thigh bone. Here's the anatomical makeup of a long bone. A long bone has a shaft and 2 ends. The shaft is known as the diaphysis, and the 2 ends are called the proximal epiphysis and the distal epiphysis. The medullary canal is a cavity in the diaphysis, which is filled with yellow marrow. The endosteum is a membrane that lines the medullary canal and keeps the yellow marrow intact. The outside of the bone is covered with a tough membrane called the periosteum. Joints are formed where two or more bones are joined together. The joints are divided into three major categories defined as to how these joints move. Diarthrosis or synovial means freely movable. An example would be the arm socket or the ball and socket of shoulder and hips. Amphiarthrosis is slightly movable. An example of this would be the vertebrae. And synarthrosis is immovable. An example of an immovable joint would be the sutures or joints of the cranium. Ligaments and cartilage are important supportive structures for the joint. Thanks.
Each time you take a step, 200 muscles work in unison to lift your foot, propel it forward, and set it down. It's just one of the many thousands of tasks performed by the muscular system. This network of over 650 muscles covers the body and is the reason we can blink, smile, run, jump, and stand upright. It's even responsible for the heart's dependable thump. First, what exactly is the muscular system? It's made up of three main muscle types: skeletal muscle, which attaches via tendons to our bones; cardiac muscle, which is only found in the heart; and smooth muscle, which lines the blood vessels in certain organs like the intestine and uterus. All three types are made up of muscle cells, also known as fibers, bundled tightly together. These bundles receive signals from the nervous system that contract the fibers, which in turn generates force and motion. This produces almost all the movements we make. Some of the only parts of the body whose motions aren't governed by the muscular system are sperm cells, the hair-like cilia in our airways, and certain white blood cells. Muscle contraction can be split into three main types. The first two, shortening muscle fibers and lengthening them, generate opposing forces. So the biceps will shorten while the triceps will lengthen or relax, pulling up the arm and making it bend at the elbow. This allows us to, say, pick up a book, or if the muscle relationship is reversed, put it down. This complementary partnership exists throughout the muscular system. The third type of contraction creates a stabilizing force. In these cases, the muscle fibers don't change in length, but instead keep the muscles rigid. This allows us to grip a mug of coffee or lean against a wall. It also maintains our posture by holding us upright. Skeletal muscles form the bulk of the muscular system, make up about 30 to 40% of the body's weight, and generate most of its motion. Some muscles are familiar to us, like the pectorals and the biceps. Others may be less so, like the buccinator, a muscle that attaches your cheek to your teeth, or the body's tiniest skeletal muscle, a 1 millimeter long tissue fragment called the stapedius that's nestled deep inside the ear. Wherever they occur, skeletal muscles are connected to the somatic nervous system, which gives us almost complete control over their movements. This muscle group also contains two types of muscle fibers to refine our motions even further: slow twitch and fast twitch. Fast twitch fibers react instantly when triggered, but quickly use up their energy and tire out. Slow twitch fibers, on the other hand, are endurance cells. They react and use energy slowly so they can work for longer periods. A sprinter will accumulate more fast twitch muscles in her legs through continuous practice, enabling her to quickly, if briefly, pick up the pace. Whereas back muscles contain more slow twitch muscles to maintain your posture all day. Unlike the skeletal muscles, the body's cardiac and smooth muscles are managed by the autonomic nervous system, beyond our direct control. That makes your heart thump roughly 3 billion times over the course of your life, which supplies the body with blood and oxygen. Autonomic control also contracts and relaxes smooth muscle in a rhythmic cycle. That pumps blood through the smooth internal walls of blood vessels, enables the intestine to constrict and push food through the digestive system, and allows the uterus to contract when a person is giving birth. As muscles work, they also use energy and produce an important byproduct, heat. In fact, muscle provides about 85% of your warmth, which the heart and blood vessels then spread evenly across the body via the blood. Without that, we couldn't maintain the temperature necessary for our survival. The muscular system may be largely invisible to us, but it leaves its mark on almost everything we do, whether it's the blink of an eye or a race to the finish line.
Across the whole planet, humans eat on average between 1 and 2.7 kilograms of food a day. That's over 365 kilograms a year per person, and more than 28,800 kilograms over the course of a lifetime. And every last scrap makes its way through the digestive system. Comprised of 10 organs, covering 9 meters, and containing over 20 specialized cell types, this is one of the most diverse and complicated systems in the human body. Its parts continuously work in unison to fulfill a singular task, transforming the raw materials of your food into the nutrients and energy that keep you alive. Spanning the entire length of your torso, the digestive system has 4 main components. First, there's the gastrointestinal tract, a twisting channel that transports your food and has an internal surface area of between 30 and 40 square meters, enough to cover half a badminton court. Second, there's the pancreas, gallbladder, and liver, a trio of organs that break down food using an array of special juices. Third, the body's enzymes, hormones, nerves, and blood all work together to break down food, modulate the digestive process, and deliver its final products. Finally, there's the mesentery, a large stretch of tissue that supports and positions all your digestive organs in the abdomen, enabling them to do their jobs. The digestive process begins before food even hits your tongue. Anticipating a tasty morsel, glands in your mouth start to pump out saliva. We produce about 1.5 liters of this liquid each day. Once inside your mouth, chewing combines with the sloshing saliva to turn food into a moist lump called the bolus. Enzymes present in the saliva break down any starch. Then your food finds itself at the rim of a 25 centimeter long tube called the esophagus, down which it must plunge to reach the stomach. Nerves in the surrounding esophageal tissue sense the bolus's presence and trigger peristalsis, a series of defined muscular contractions. That propels the food into the stomach, where it's left at the mercy of the muscular stomach walls, which pound the bolus, breaking it into chunks. Hormones secreted by cells in the lining trigger the release of acids and enzyme-rich juices from the stomach wall that start to dissolve the food and break down its proteins. These hormones also alert the pancreas, liver, and gallbladder to produce digestive juices and transfer bile, a yellowish-green liquid that digests fat, in preparation for the next stage. After 3 hours inside the stomach, the once shapely bolus is now a frothy liquid called chyme, and it's ready to move into the small intestine. The liver sends bile to the gallbladder, which secretes it into the first portion of the small intestine, called the duodenum. Here, it dissolves the fats floating in the slurry of chyme so they can be easily digested by the pancreatic and intestinal juices that have leached onto the scene. These enzyme-rich juices break the fat molecules down into fatty acids and glycerol for easier absorption into the body. The enzymes also carry out the final deconstruction of proteins into amino acids and carbohydrates into glucose. This happens in the small intestine's lower regions, the jejunum and ileum, which are coated in millions of tiny projections called villi. These create a huge surface area to maximize molecule absorption and transference into the bloodstream. The blood takes them on the final leg of their journey to feed the body's organs and tissues. But it's not over quite yet. Leftover fiber, water, and dead cells sloughed off during digestion make it into the large intestine, also known as the colon. The body drains out most of the remaining fluid through the intestinal wall. What's left is a soft mass called stool. The colon squeezes this byproduct into a pouch called the rectum, where nerves sense it expanding. and tell the body when it's time to expel the waste. The byproducts of digestion exit through the anus, and the food's long journey, typically lasting between 30 and 40 hours, is finally complete.
It's a hot day, and you've just downed several glasses of water, one after the other. Behind the sudden urge that follows are two bean-shaped organs that work as fine-tuned internal sensors. They balance the amount of fluid in your body, detect waste in your blood, and know when to release the vitamins, minerals, and hormones you need to stay alive. Say hello to your kidneys. The main role of these organs is to dispose of waste products and to turn them into urine. The body's 8 liters of blood pass through the kidneys between 20 and 25 times each day, meaning that together, these organs filter about 180 liters every 24 hours. The ingredients in your blood are constantly changing as you ingest food and drink, which explains why the kidneys need to be on permanent duty. Blood enters each kidney through arteries that branch and branch until they form tiny vessels that entwine with special internal modules called nephrons. In each kidney, 1 million of these nephrons form a powerful array of filters and sensors that carefully sift through the blood. This is where we see just how refined and accurate this internal sensing system is. To filter the blood, each nephron uses 2 powerful pieces of equipment, a blob-like structure called a glomerulus, and a long stringy straw-like tubule. The glomerulus works like a sieve, allowing only certain ingredients, such as vitamins and minerals, to pass into the tubule. Then, this vessel's job is to detect whether any of those ingredients are needed in the body. If so, they're reabsorbed in amounts that the body needs so they can circulate in the blood again. But the blood doesn't only carry useful ingredients. It contains waste products too, and the nephrons have to figure out what to do with them. The tubules sense compounds the body doesn't need, like urea, left over from the breakdown of proteins, and redirects them as urine out of the kidneys and through 2 long sewers called ureters. These tubes empty their contents into the bladder to be discharged, ridding your body of that waste once and for all. There's water in that urine too. If the kidney detects too much of it in your blood, for instance, when you've chugged several glasses at once, it sends the extra liquid to the bladder to be removed. On the other hand, low water levels in the blood prompt the kidney to release some back into the bloodstream, meaning that less water makes it into the urine. This is why urine appears yellower when you're less hydrated. By controlling water, your kidneys stabilize the body's fluid levels. But this fine balancing act isn't the kidneys' only skill. These
Your heart is a pump. It's a muscular organ about the size of your fist and is located slightly left of center in your chest. Your heart is divided into the right and left side. The division protects oxygen-rich blood from mixing with oxygen-poor blood. Together, your heart and blood vessels comprise your cardiovascular system, which circulates blood and oxygen around your body. In fact, your heart pumps about 5 quarts of blood every minute, and it beats about 100,000 times in one day. That's about 35 million times in a year. Oxygen-poor blood, blue blood, returns to the heart after circulating through your body. The right side of the heart, composed of the right atrium and ventricle, collects and pumps the blood to the lungs through the pulmonary arteries. The lungs refresh the blood with a new supply of oxygen, making it turn red. Oxygen-rich blood, red blood, then enters the left side of the heart, composed of the left atrium and ventricle, and is pumped through the aorta to the body to supply tissues with oxygen. 4 valves within your heart keep your blood moving the right way. The tricuspid, mitral, pulmonary, and aortic valves work like gates on a fence. They open only one way and only when pushed on. Each valve opens and closes once per heartbeat, or about once every second. A beating heart contracts and relaxes. Contraction is called systole, and relaxing is called diastole. During systole, your ventricles contract, forcing blood into the vessels going to your lungs and body, much like ketchup being forced out of a squeeze bottle. The right ventricle contracts a little bit before the left ventricle does. Your ventricles then relax during diastole and are filled with blood coming from the upper chambers, the left and right atria. Then the cycle starts over again. Your heart is nourished by blood too. Blood vessels called coronary arteries extend over the surface of your heart and branch into smaller capillaries. Here you can see just the network of blood vessels that feed your heart with oxygen-rich blood. Your heart also has electrical wiring, which keeps it beating. Electrical impulses begin high in the right atrium and travel through specialized pathways to the ventricles, delivering the signal to pump. The conduction system keeps your heart beating in a coordinated and normal rhythm, which in turn keeps blood circulating. The continuous exchange of oxygen-rich blood with oxygen-poor blood is what keeps you alive.
Many of us have hundreds of things on our minds at any moment, often struggling to keep track of everything we need to do. But fortunately, there's one important thing we don't have to worry about remembering: breathing. When you breathe, you transport oxygen to the body's cells to keep them working, and clear your system of the carbon dioxide that this work generates. Breathing, in other words, keeps the body alive. So how do we accomplish this crucial and complex task without even thinking about it? The answer lies in our body's respiratory system. Like any machinery, it consists of specialized components and requires a trigger to start functioning. Here, the components are the structures and tissues making up the lungs, as well as the various other respiratory organs connected to them. And to get this machine moving, we need the autonomic nervous system, our brain's unconscious control center for the vital functions. As the body prepares to take in oxygen-rich air, this system sends a signal to the muscles around your lungs, flattening the diaphragm and contracting the intercostal muscles between your ribs to create more space for the lungs to expand. Air then whooshes into your nose and mouth, through your trachea and into the bronchi that split at the trachea's base, with one entering each lung. Like tree branches, these small tubes divide into thousands of tinier passages, called bronchioles. It's tempting to think of the lungs as huge balloons, but instead of being hollow, they're actually spongy inside, with the bronchioles running throughout the parenchyma tissue. At the end of each bronchiole is a little air sac called an alveolus, wrapped in capillaries full of red blood cells containing special proteins called hemoglobin. The air you've breathed in fills these sacs, causing the lungs to inflate. Here is where the vital exchange occurs. At this point, the capillaries are packed with carbon dioxide, and the air sacs are full of oxygen. But due to the basic process of diffusion, the molecules of each gas want to move to a place where there is a lower concentration of their kind. So as oxygen crosses over to the capillaries, the hemoglobin grabs it up, while the carbon dioxide is unloaded into the lungs. The oxygen-rich hemoglobin is then transported throughout the body via the bloodstream. But what do our lungs do with all that carbon dioxide? Exhale it, of course. The autonomic nervous system kicks in again, causing the diaphragm to ball up and the intercostal muscles to relax, making the chest cavity smaller and forcing the lungs to compress. The carbon dioxide-rich air is expelled, and the cycle begins again. So that's how these spongy organs keep our bodies efficiently supplied with air. Lungs inhale and exhale between 15 and 25 times a minute, which amounts to an incredible 10,000 liters of air each day. That's a lot of work, but don't sweat it. Your lungs and your autonomic nervous system have got it covered.
Smile and learn!
Today we're going to learn about the parts of the brain and how they work. The human brain is the most important organ of the nervous system. It is located in the head and is protected inside the skull. Have you ever asked yourself why we breathe without realizing it, or why we remember our way to school without having to think about it? Our brain is in charge of coordinating all the vital functions of our body, making sense of what is happening around us. The brain receives signals from the outside world and sends messages to the different parts of the body so that they respond adequately. The human brain is divided into three parts: the cerebellum, the encephalic trunk, and the brain cortex. The cerebellum controls balance, movement, and coordination. Thanks to the cerebellum, we can walk, maintain balance, or do sports. The encephalic trunk connects the brain to the spinal cord, which goes from our neck all the way down to the lowest part of our back. The encephalic trunk is also in charge of the vital functions like breathing, for example, or digesting and pumping blood to all parts of our body. The brain cortex is the outermost layer of our brain. It consists of neurons, a type of interconnected cell that transmits information generated by nervous impulses. The brain directs our body. It receives signals from the outside world and sends messages so that different parts of our body, legs, arms, etc., respond adequately. For example, if we touched a hot dish, our brain would send a signal to our hand to quickly move it away. Goodness, that was close. We could get burned. The brain is divided into two major parts, the right hemisphere and the left hemisphere, which are interconnected by fibers known as hard body. The left hemisphere is in charge of important tasks like calculating, reasoning, and speech. The right hemisphere is in charge of tasks related to intuition and creativity. That's right, it's the hemisphere associated with music and art. Did you know that the right hemisphere controls the left part of our body, and the left hemisphere controls the right part of our body? What a crisscross! Both hemispheres consist of 4 lobes: frontal, parietal, temporal, and occipital. Each one carries out different brain functions. The frontal lobe is in charge of planning our actions and controlling emotions. The parietal lobe is in charge of giving meaning to the information received by the senses. The temporal lobe is in charge of functions related to memory and face recognition. And the occipital lobe is in charge of processing visual information. You can tell that our brain is a very important organ, and for this reason, we should look after it and exercise it. Here's 5 basic tips. Protect your head by wearing a helmet when you ride a bicycle or a motorbike. Eat healthy foods that energize your brain. Do physical exercise. Sleep at least 8 hours a day to recharge your brain activity. Read, play, solve riddles or math challenges to keep your brain active. Our brain is amazing, isn't it?